Your soulmate is shaking in total shock right now. They lost all control after finding out you are. Don't skip. Listen carefully. This message is for you, and your heart needs this right now, because your soulmate recently experienced a realization so unexpected that it completely disrupted the way they had been viewing their life. Not because someone told them a secret. Not because they uncovered hidden information. Not because a shocking event suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Something much quieter happened. Something much deeper. Something that began with a single observation they couldn't stop thinking about. And listen to this. At first, they barely noticed it. Life was moving quickly. Responsibilities demanded attention. Days blended together. Weeks seemed to disappear. Everything felt routine. Everything felt predictable. Everything felt exactly the same as it always had. Yet beneath the surface, something was changing. A thought had appeared. A thought that refused to leave. Because your heart needs this right now, because some realizations arrive quietly before transforming everything. Your soulmate was standing at the beginning of one of those realizations. And listen to this. One evening, after a particularly busy day, they finally found a moment alone. No conversations. No obligations. No distractions. Just silence. And in that silence, they started reflecting. Not on work. Not on responsibilities. Not on future plans. On life itself. On lessons. On growth. On the experiences that had shaped them. And that's when something unusual happened. A memory appeared. Then another. Then another. Not dramatic memories. Not extraordinary memories. Simple moments. Ordinary moments. Moments that somehow remained meaningful long after they should have faded. Because your heart needs this right now, because the moments that stay with us often reveal what mattered most. Your soulmate was beginning to understand that. And listen to this. The more they reflected, the more they noticed a pattern. Every memory that remained carried something in common. Growth. Strength. Resilience. Understanding. Lessons learned through experience. Wisdom earned through time. And suddenly they realized something remarkable. The qualities that impressed them most weren't achievements. They weren't status. They weren't appearances. They were character. The ability to keep going. The ability to grow. The ability to remain authentic despite challenges. And that realization immediately captured their attention. Because your heart needs this right now, because genuine strength often becomes visible only when we stop looking at surface-level things. Your soulmate had stopped looking at the surface. And listen to this. The realization grew stronger over the following days. Everywhere they looked, they noticed examples of it. People who succeeded despite obstacles. People who learned from setbacks. People who transformed challenges into wisdom. And the more they noticed it, the more they appreciated it. Not because those people were perfect. Because they were real. Because they were authentic. Because they were resilient. And that authenticity carried a power they had underestimated for years. Because your heart needs this right now, because authenticity leaves a deeper impact than perfection ever could. Your soulmate was finally understanding that. And listen to this. One night, while thinking about everything they had learned, they asked themselves a question. A question that changed everything. The question was, what qualities do I truly admire? At first, dozens of answers appeared. Success. Confidence. Achievement. Recognition. But the longer they reflected, the more those answers faded. And a different answer emerged. A stronger answer. A more honest answer. They admired courage. Not dramatic courage. Quiet courage. The courage to keep going during difficult times. The courage to learn from mistakes. The courage to remain genuine when pretending would be easier. Because your heart needs this right now, because quiet courage often goes unnoticed by the people who possess it. Your soulmate was finally noticing it. And listen to this. As the realization deepened, they began re-examining their entire perspective. For years, they had focused on outcomes. Goals. Achievements. Milestones. Yet now they were focusing on something entirely different. Character. Growth. Integrity. Resilience. The qualities that remain even when circumstances change. And suddenly they realized those qualities matter far more than temporary success. Because success can come and go. Recognition can come and go. Circumstances can come and go. But character stays. And that realization shook them. Because your heart needs this right now, because some truths completely rearrange our priorities once we understand them. Your soulmate was experiencing that shift. And listen to this. The strange part wasn't the realization itself. The strange part was how emotional it made them feel. Not because they were sad. Not because they were confused. Because they were grateful. Grateful for lessons. Grateful for growth. Grateful for every challenge that helped build strength. Grateful for every experience that taught wisdom. For the first time in a very long while, they stopped judging their journey. They stopped questioning every difficult chapter. They stopped wishing certain lessons had never happened. Instead, they appreciated them. Because they finally understood their purpose. Because your heart needs this right now, because understanding transforms frustration into gratitude. Your soulmate was discovering gratitude. And listen to this. As midnight approached, they sat quietly and reflected on everything one final time. The memories. The lessons. The growth. The realizations. Everything pointed toward the same conclusion. The most valuable qualities in life are often the quietest ones. The strength nobody sees. The resilience nobody applauds. The wisdom nobody notices. The authenticity that remains unchanged regardless of circumstances. And once they understood that truth, they could never see the world the same way again. Because your heart needs this right now, because meaningful realizations don't just change what we think. They change how we see everything. Your soulmate's perspective had changed forever. And as they sat there in the quiet, one final thought echoed through their mind. Maybe the qualities that matter most aren't the ones everyone notices. Maybe they're the ones revealed through growth, resilience, and authenticity. Maybe those are the qualities that truly leave a lasting impact. And the moment that realization settled into place, everything suddenly felt clearer than ever before. Don't skip. Listen carefully. This message is for you, and your heart needs this right now, because after the realization first appeared, your soulmate tried to move on from it. They really did. They told themselves they were overthinking. They told themselves it wasn't important. They told themselves it was just another passing thought that would disappear after a good night's sleep. But it didn't disappear. In fact, it became stronger. And listen to this. The following morning felt strangely different. Nothing around them had changed. The same responsibilities were waiting. The same routine continued. The same world moved forward exactly as it always had. Yet something inside them felt different. A question kept repeating itself. A question they couldn't ignore. A question that seemed to follow them everywhere they went. Because your heart needs this right now, because some questions return repeatedly when they contain an important lesson. Your soulmate was beginning to understand that lesson. And listen to this. As the day continued, they found themselves noticing things they normally overlooked. Small acts of kindness. Quiet moments of strength. Simple examples of resilience. Ordinary people handling extraordinary challenges with dignity and grace. And suddenly they realized something. The people who inspired them most were rarely the loudest people. Rarely the most recognized people. Rarely the most celebrated people. Instead, they were often the people who quietly kept moving forward. The people who continued growing. The people who remained authentic no matter what life placed in front of them. Because your heart needs this right now, because authenticity creates a kind of influence that cannot be measured. Your soulmate was finally recognizing that influence. And listen to this. That evening, they found themselves reflecting once again. The realization had become impossible to avoid. Every time they examined it, it revealed another layer. Another lesson. Another truth. The more they explored it, the more powerful it became. Because what originally looked like a simple observation was becoming something much larger. A complete shift in perspective. And perspective changes everything. Because your heart needs this right now, because the way we see life often determines the quality of our experience within it. Your soulmate's perspective was changing rapidly. And listen to this. For years, they had admired achievement. Goals accomplished. Milestones reached. Success stories celebrated by everyone around them. There is nothing wrong with those things. Yet now they were realizing something deeper. Achievement tells part of a story. Character tells the entire story. The person someone becomes while pursuing their goals often matters more than the goals themselves. And that realization stopped them completely. Because suddenly they understood why certain people leave such a lasting impact. Not because of what they achieve. Because of who they become. Because your heart needs this right now, because who we become often matters longer than what we accomplish. Your soulmate could no longer ignore that truth. And listen to this. The realization continued growing. One memory after another surfaced. Moments they had nearly forgotten. Lessons they had once overlooked. Experiences they had underestimated. And every memory seemed to point toward the same conclusion. Strength isn't loud. Wisdom isn't flashy. Authenticity doesn't demand attention. Yet all three leave permanent impressions. Because your heart needs this right now, because the most meaningful qualities often operate quietly. Your soulmate was finally paying attention to those qualities. And listen to this. Late that night, another realization appeared. One that left them genuinely stunned. They realized that some of the qualities they admired most are often invisible to the person who possesses them. Resilience rarely announces itself. Growth rarely introduces itself. Courage rarely recognizes itself. People often underestimate their own strength because they live with it every day. To them, it feels normal. To others, it feels remarkable. And that thought stayed with them. Because your heart needs this right now, because we often fail to recognize our own growth while everyone else can see it clearly. Your soulmate couldn't stop thinking about that. And listen to this. The more they reflected, the more emotional they became. Not because they were sad. Not because they were overwhelmed. Because they were grateful. Grateful for every lesson life had provided. Grateful for every challenge that built resilience. Grateful for every difficult season that revealed hidden strength. For the first time in a very long while, they stopped seeing obstacles as interruptions. They started seeing them as teachers. And once they made that shift, everything changed. Because your heart needs this right now, because life becomes more meaningful when we begin learning from every chapter. Your soulmate was learning deeply. And listen to this. The truth that left them stunned wasn't a dramatic secret. It wasn't shocking information. It wasn't a mystery hidden from the world. The truth was surprisingly simple. The qualities that matter most are often the qualities we overlook. Patience. Integrity. Resilience. Growth. Authenticity. Compassion. These qualities rarely make headlines. Yet they quietly shape entire lives. And once your soulmate recognized their importance, they couldn't stop thinking about them. Because your heart needs this right now, because meaningful truths often seem simple after we discover them. Your soulmate had discovered one. And listen to this. As midnight approached, they sat quietly and reviewed everything they had learned over the past few days. The memories. The realizations. The lessons. The reflections. Everything pointed toward one powerful conclusion. The strongest people are not always the people who appear strongest. The wisest people are not always the people who appear wisest. The most influential people are not always the people receiving the most attention. Sometimes the greatest impact comes from authenticity. Sometimes the greatest strength comes from perseverance. Sometimes the greatest wisdom comes from experience. And that realization completely transformed how they viewed the world. Because your heart needs this right now, because true understanding often changes what we value most. Your soulmate's values were changing. And listen to this. Before the night ended, one final thought settled into their heart. A thought that felt impossible to forget. It was this. Maybe I've been measuring importance the wrong way. Maybe what truly matters isn't what shines the brightest. Maybe what truly matters is what remains strong, genuine, and real through every season of life. The moment that thought appeared, everything became clear. And once that clarity arrived, there was no going back. Don't skip. Listen carefully. This message is for you. And your heart needs this right now, because after everything your soulmate had been realizing, after all the reflection, all the memories, and all the unexpected lessons that kept appearing, they reached a point where ignoring the truth was no longer possible. At first, they tried. They told themselves they were overthinking. They told themselves they were being emotional. They told themselves that eventually the feeling would fade. But it didn't. Instead, it grew stronger. Day by day. Thought by thought. Realization by realization. And listen to this. The strange thing wasn't the discovery itself. The strange thing was how often it returned. While working. While resting. While walking. While sitting quietly at the end of the day. No matter what they were doing, the same realization kept resurfacing. Like a lesson that refused to leave until it had been fully understood. Because your heart needs this right now, because some truths return repeatedly when they have something important to teach us. Your soulmate was being taught something important. And listen to this. One evening, after a particularly long day, they sat alone and allowed themselves to think deeply. Not about responsibilities. Not about tomorrow. Not about unfinished tasks. About life. About growth. About the things that truly matter. And that's when a powerful question appeared. A question that stopped them completely. The question was, what actually leaves a lasting impact? At first, dozens of answers appeared. Success. Recognition. Achievement. Accomplishments. Milestones. Yet the longer they sat with the question, the less convincing those answers became. Because they realized something surprising. Many achievements are eventually forgotten. Many accomplishments fade into memory. Many victories become old stories. Yet certain qualities never lose their value. Because your heart needs this right now, because what lasts longest is rarely what shines brightest. Your soulmate was finally understanding that. And listen to this. As they reflected, they started thinking about people they admired. Not celebrities. Not public figures. People they genuinely respected. People who had influenced them. People who had left a meaningful impression on their heart. And something remarkable happened. Not one of those people appeared in their mind because of status. Not one appeared because of recognition. Not one appeared because of achievements alone. They appeared because of character. Because of kindness. Because of resilience. Because of authenticity. Because of the way they treated others. Because of the lessons they embodied through their actions. And suddenly everything made sense. Because your heart needs this right now, because character creates a deeper legacy than accomplishment ever can. Your soulmate had finally discovered that truth. And listen to this. The realization hit harder than they expected. For years, they had measured value through external things. Through outcomes. Through results. Through achievements. Yet now they were seeing life through an entirely different lens. A lens focused on growth. A lens focused on integrity. A lens focused on becoming rather than simply achieving. And that shift changed everything. Because your heart needs this right now, because changing the way we measure success changes the way we live. Your soulmate's entire perspective was changing. And listen to this. As the days passed, they became increasingly aware of their own journey. The person they were years ago. The person they became through experience. The lessons they learned. The challenges they survived. The wisdom they gained. And suddenly they realized something they had never fully appreciated before. They had grown far more than they realized. Far more. Because growth often happens gradually. Quietly. Without announcements. Without recognition. Without anyone noticing. Including ourselves. Because your heart needs this right now, because we are often the last people to recognize our own transformation. Your soulmate was finally recognizing theirs. And listen to this. The more they reflected, the more emotional they became. Not because they were sad. Not because they regretted anything. Because they were grateful. Grateful for every lesson. Grateful for every challenge. Grateful for every chapter that helped shape them. Even the difficult chapters. Especially the difficult chapters. Because looking back, they could finally see the purpose hidden inside those experiences. The difficult moments had built strength. The uncertain moments had built trust. The disappointing moments had built wisdom. Nothing had been wasted. Because your heart needs this right now, because life often reveals its purpose only after enough time has passed. Your soulmate could finally see the purpose. And listen to this. Then another realization appeared. One that completely changed their perspective. They realized that people often spend years searching for what matters most. Searching for meaning. Searching for purpose. Searching for fulfillment. Yet many of the answers already exist within the lessons they have lived through. The wisdom is already there. The growth is already there. The understanding is already there. We simply have to recognize it. And once they recognized it, they felt something they hadn't felt in a very long time. Peace. Real peace. Because your heart needs this right now, because understanding creates a peace that certainty never can. Your soulmate was finally finding that peace. And listen to this. As midnight approached, they looked back over everything they had learned. Every lesson. Every memory. Every realization. Every moment of growth. Everything seemed connected. Everything seemed meaningful. Everything seemed to point toward one simple truth. The things that matter most are often invisible. Strength. Integrity. Authenticity. Compassion. Resilience. Wisdom. These qualities quietly shape lives. Quietly transform futures. Quietly create lasting impact. And once they understood that, they couldn't stop thinking about it. Because your heart needs this right now, because meaningful truths have a way of changing us forever. Your soulmate was being changed forever. And listen to this. Before the night ended, one final thought settled deeply into their heart. Maybe the greatest discoveries aren't about finding something new. Maybe they're about finally recognizing what was valuable all along. The moment that realization appeared, everything suddenly felt clearer. The past made more sense. The present felt more meaningful. The future felt less frightening. And for the first time in a very long while, they felt completely aligned with the lessons life had been trying to teach them. Don't skip. Listen carefully. This message is for you, and your heart needs this right now, because after days of reflection, after countless memories resurfaced, and after every lesson finally began connecting together, your soulmate arrived at a realization so powerful that it changed the way they viewed everything. Not just the past. Not just the present. Everything. And listen to this. For a long time, they believed the biggest discoveries in life would arrive dramatically. A sudden breakthrough. A life-changing event. A moment so obvious that it would be impossible to miss. But life had different plans. The realization that changed everything arrived quietly. Without warning. Without attention. Without fanfare. It appeared during a simple moment of reflection. And somehow that made it even more powerful. Because your heart needs this right now, because the most important truths often arrive quietly enough to be missed by anyone who isn't paying attention. Your soulmate was finally paying attention. And listen to this. As they looked back over everything they had experienced, something became impossible to ignore. The people who inspired them most were never the people who seemed perfect. The people who left the deepest impression were never the people who had easy lives. The people they respected most were the people who kept growing through difficult seasons. The people who remained authentic. The people who remained kind. The people who remained strong even when life became complicated. And suddenly they understood why this realization felt so important. Because those qualities mattered more than anything else. Because your heart needs this right now, because character outlasts circumstances. Your soulmate finally understood that. And listen to this. The shock wasn't discovering something hidden. The shock was realizing how long they had overlooked what truly mattered. For years, they focused on visible success, visible progress, visible achievements. Yet some of the most valuable qualities in life cannot be measured. You cannot measure resilience. You cannot measure integrity. You cannot measure wisdom. You cannot measure authenticity. Yet those qualities shape entire lives. And once they understood that, they couldn't stop thinking about it. Because your heart needs this right now, because the most valuable things are often the hardest to see. Your soulmate was finally seeing them. And listen to this. One evening, while sitting quietly and reflecting on everything they had learned, they noticed another truth. A truth that completely changed their perspective. They realized that many of the qualities they admired most are built during difficult seasons. Patience is built through waiting. Strength is built through challenge. Wisdom is built through experience. Compassion is built through understanding pain. Growth is built through uncertainty. Suddenly the difficult chapters of life look different. They no longer looked like interruptions. They looked like preparation. Because your heart needs this right now, because some of life's hardest chapters become the source of its greatest lessons. Your soulmate finally appreciated those lessons. And listen to this. The more they reflected, the more grateful they became. Grateful for every obstacle. Grateful for every lesson. Grateful for every chapter they once wished had ended sooner. Because now they could see the hidden value inside those experiences. Now they could see how those experiences shaped their character. Now they could see how those experiences created wisdom. And that understanding changed everything. Because your heart needs this right now, because gratitude often appears when understanding finally arrives. Your soulmate had finally arrived there. And listen to this. Then came the realization that truly left them speechless. The realization that made everything click into place. The realization that answered questions they didn't even know they were asking. It was this. The qualities they admired most were not rare because few people possessed them. They were rare because few people recognized them. Resilience often looks ordinary. Authenticity often looks ordinary. Integrity often looks ordinary. Yet those qualities quietly influence everything. And once your soulmate understood that, they could never look at people the same way again. Because your heart needs this right now, because recognizing true value changes the way we see the world. Your soulmate's entire perspective had shifted. And listen to this. For the first time in a very long while, they stopped comparing. Stopped measuring. Stopped judging. Stopped focusing on appearances. Instead, they started appreciating. Appreciating growth. Appreciating effort. Appreciating lessons. Appreciating authenticity. Appreciating the courage it takes to keep moving forward when life becomes difficult. And that appreciation brought peace. Real peace. The kind of peace that comes from understanding what truly matters. Because your heart needs this right now, because peace often arrives when our priorities finally align with our values. Your soulmate had reached that alignment. And listen to this. The discovery didn't change what happened in the past. It changed how they understood the past. The discovery didn't change who they were. It changed how clearly they could see who they had become. The discovery didn't give them all the answers. It helped them ask better questions. Questions like, what kind of person am I becoming? What lessons am I learning? What values am I strengthening? What truly matters? And those questions transformed everything. Because your heart needs this right now, because better questions often create better lives. Your soulmate was asking different questions now. And listen to this. As the night grew quiet, they reflected on the entire journey one final time. The memories. The lessons. The challenges. The growth. The realizations. Everything pointed toward the same conclusion. The most powerful qualities in life are often invisible. Yet they shape every decision, every relationship, every chapter, every future. And once they understood that, they felt something they hadn't felt in a very long time. Clarity. Deep clarity. The kind of clarity that doesn't remove every uncertainty but helps you understand what matters despite uncertainty. Because your heart needs this right now, because clarity is not knowing everything. Clarity is knowing what deserves your attention. Your soulmate had finally found that clarity. And listen to this. Before the night ended, one final thought settled deeply into their heart. The real shock wasn't discovering something new. The real shock was finally recognizing what was valuable all along. The strength. The growth. The resilience. The authenticity. The lessons hidden inside every chapter. And once that truth settled into place, everything looked different. The past felt meaningful. The present felt valuable. The future felt hopeful. And for the first time in a very long while, they felt completely at peace with the journey that brought them here.